Welcome to the Chameleon Cook part of Juan's World, and today I'm starting a new series on mushrooms, and you'll see here a range of Asian mushrooms that are easily available to me in the markets and sometimes even wild. When I lived in Kunming, the wild mushrooms were just amazingly various because people who lived in the woods in the mountains would collect the mushrooms in the rainy season and then would come down into the city and sell them. So you could walk along the streets and there'd be vendors at your feet with all kinds of mushrooms: black, yellow, green stripes, red stripes. And one or two people died each year. And I tried quite a few of them. And now I live in Phnom Penh. The variety is a little bit more limited, but not a lot. I can get plenty of different kinds of mushrooms, and I'll show you them in a bit. What I'm going to do today is very chameleon. I'm going to blend my crumble recipe with my cottage pie recipe, and instead of putting mashed potato on top, I'm going to put crumble on top. Although it's going to be a different kind of crumble. There's going to be no sugar in it, of course. It's just going to be flour and oats and oil, and I'm going to use olive oil because I want a little bit of flavor in the topping. And we're going to see. I've never tried anything like this before, so your guess is as good as mine, and we'll get to it. We'll start with the crumble topping, and this is highly experimental, and as you will discover at the end, I'm not completely satisfied with it as yet because I didn't have quite enough to make a deep topping, which is probably all right, but I think I would change the proportions a little bit, add a little bit more. You remember from apple crumble, if you watch that, or if not, go back and watch it, you'll know that the proportions there are 2, 2, 1, 1. That is 2 of oats, 2 of flour, 1 of sugar, 1 of fat. And the fat can be either oil or butter. Well, now I'm not going to add sugar because this is a main dish, and so I'm just going to be using 2 of oats, 2 of flour, and 1 of fat, and in this case I'm going to be using extra virgin olive oil to provide a little bit of extra taste. I think if I do this again, I will add a half more to each, so it'll be 1.5 oats, 1.5 flour, and 3/4 of oil. Or I may even go a little bit more generously with the oil because the topping turned out to be slightly dry. Well, we'll see. I'll get to that at the end. So here we go with the mushrooms. Here's a selection of mushrooms that I bought at the market yesterday. I know their Khmer names. I don't know their English names, but I expect you'll be able to recognize some of them in your market. And actually, the purpose here is to have a selection of mushrooms. I don't know what's available to you. but these are what were available to me yesterday. So let's get started with the cooking. Okay, so here we are getting set up. I've got some butter in my skillet and I'm just heating it a little bit, and I'm going to get ready to put the mushrooms in. And I've got a few more than I put in the original photo, but you get the general idea. So I don't want to let the butter brown, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the mushrooms. Okay, I'm just going to saute a little bit. I'm going to cook them down so that they're soft. I don't want them to get too soft in the cooking process. Okay, just a few minutes later, getting softer. I'm going to have them take on just a tiny bit of color. Doing this on high heat. You might be able to see that some of the mushrooms, they're taking on a little bit of color. Not too much, just a little. And they are softening nicely. I'm just about ready to add the broth. Just give them a couple more minutes, then we'll come back. So here is a little bit of broth I made so that I can add it to the mushrooms to make a gravy for the pie. It's a little bit of beef stock with dried shiitake mushrooms in it so that they give it a really strong mushroom flavor. So now I'm going to add a little broth with the dried mushrooms, which have now been soaking and have taken on a little body, but they've also added their flavor to the broth. Okay, I'm going to let that simmer, and I'm not going to add too much broth because I'm not actually going to make a gravy, I don't think at least. I mean, you realize I'm flying blind at this point. I have no idea what I'm doing. But my idea was that I will make the gravy in the pie rather than external to it. And it's possible that when it bakes, some of the gravy may spill over into the crumble, I don't know. But I don't want to have a separate gravy at the moment. I may change my mind, we'll see. This is a great benefit of being a chameleon cook, is that you can just play with your ideas as you're working. I'm going to take a little taste of the broth at this point just to see where we're at. And I'm going to add a little bit of mushroom soy, I think. We'll see. Maybe too much. Yeah, definitely going to be too much. This is a very mushroomy gravy already. So let me turn that to a simmer. I'm going to let this simmer. For the moment, I think I'm going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes. And what I'm then going to do is let it rest. I would normally let it rest overnight, but what I may do this time, which will amount to the same thing, is to make the pie, bake it, and then let the pie rest overnight. Or, probably more likely, eat a small portion of the pie and then let the rest of it rest and come back to it next day. So, see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, so now in with some flour and water just to thicken up the gravy. I haven't added any spices or herbs of any sort. This is just mushrooms, and there's a little bit of beef stock in the gravy, but it's really, really mushroomy, and because it's my first experiment. I think if I do this again, maybe next week, who knows? If I do this again, I will experiment with some herbs and spices. I can think of straight away that allspice and cloves will be really perfect in this kind of gravy. And I'm going to taste again just so that I can get a sense of whether there's anything imbalanced in the gravy. You can see it's thickening up quite nicely. It's going to be baking for at least 40 minutes, so I don't have to worry if the flour doesn't get too cooked right now, because it will get baked properly in the oven. So let's have a little taste. It's a little bit bland. What I'm going to do is just let it simmer down a little bit more, and then I'm going to let it rest and see what the tastes are like. If the taste is still a little bit bland, then I will adjust it. So it turned out to be still just a little bit bland, not terribly bland, but a little bit bland. So I added a few drops of mushroom soy sauce, and that perked it right up. Now it's ready to bake. I have to put it in a casserole, and then I'll top it with the crumble, and I will then get back to you, and we'll go on with the baking and then the eating. So here are the cooked mushrooms and gravy in my casserole, and now I'm going to top it with the crumble, and you'll see that the crumble is not quite thick enough to cover. It does cover completely very thinly, but I think that I need a little bit more. And now I'm going to pop it in a 200 degrees Celsius oven for 40 to 45 minutes. Last 10 minutes I'm going to turn on the broiler so that the top will get nice and golden, and I'll come back with the finished product in a little bit. Okay, and here is the finished crumble. And I've tried a little bit, and I decided, yes, I need some gravy, just because the topping, nice, I like it a lot, but it does need a little bit more flavor. It's very much oats and flour. And it's also a little bit dry, so I will be adding a little extra portion of oil the next time I make this crumble for another dish, another day. But meanwhile, if you like my cooking, if you like my channel, then like and subscribe, and happy cooking.